I want to ask you something first off, because Mr. Marandi makes at least one point that is true, and that is the Israelis have been openly posting their involvement. Pompeo openly posted and tweeted on X that, you know, I don't have it right now, maybe I do have it right now, but he basically said, we're all with you, and by the way, oh, here it is. No, it's not there. Yeah. By the way, Mossad is walking with you as well. This is catnip for a government who wants to blame the outside world. Why is that allowed to happen?
If I may just start, Professor Marandi reminds me of Baghdad Bob. If you remember, during the Iraq 2003 war, he was Saddam Hussein's information minister who would just deny reality when the tanks were rolling behind him. So Mr. Marandi reminds me of being like a Baghdad Bob with internet, and that he has his press credential, which is taghiye, deny, deflect, deceive. And indeed, he seems to me to be like Professor Tarantel.
All right.
So now, why did Israelis and the others do that?
And Trump himself telling people to protest, I'll come to your help.
Yes, from one side, it is a symbolic gestures to those defenseless, unarmed protesters on the street, that the world is with you, you are not alone. But let's not forget, this is a regime that is at war with defenseless protesters. And they're using military-grade ammunition, AK-7s, tanks, and even certain technology to disrupt internet. So if Mr. Marandi is so telling the truth, why doesn't he allow, you know, Amnesty International, you know, all the human rights defenders to go into the prisons, to go and count the dead?
To be fair, he's not a member of the government, but I understand where you're coming from. But more importantly about the opposition, because Reza Pahlavi, the son of the deposed and late Shah, claims, you know, a leadership role and wants to play a transitional role. There have been people waving the monarch's flag. There have been people saying his name. He recently claimed that 50,000 officers of the Revolutionary Guard were preparing to desert. But he's since had to back away from that and revise it. There hasn't been any notable dissent in the top level of the military, which many people say would be the beginning of a move away from the current Islamic Republic government. Why not? Why hasn't he been able to get that?
Well, these numbers of military personnel who Mr. Marandi claims have been shot and killed. Who were they? Who were they fighting with? You know, who were they protecting while they were fighting? So that's one question to answer. And secondly, what we need to know is that there's a lot of defections from within the regime in the past few years. And, you know, not only from IRGC, but also from within the Beit Rahbari,
that means
the Supreme Leader's office,
yeah.
the Office of the Presidency, all the information that is coming out to us and to other outlets, and even to the Israelis, have been given by people within the regime. That's why the Israelis could easily, eliminate 20 IRGC commanders. So this
back in June.
Back in June. And so the thing is, it is very important for the West to stop giving symbolic, and that's what I hear from activists inside Iran, that they do not want to hear symbolic statements anymore. They heard that during President Obama, during the 2009 protests. They heard that in 2017, 2019, afterwards from President Biden. This time, they want Mr. Trump to prove that he's a man of his words.
Okay, but, and I said it to Mr. Marandi too, Trump has said about Reza Pahlavi, he seems very nice, but I don't know how he'd play within his own country. And we really aren't up to that point yet. I don't know whether or not his country would accept his leadership. And certainly if they would, that would be fine with me. I mean, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement. And yet the monarchies have been supported by elements of the United States government and also, as you know, the Israeli government. So Is that a black mark, do you think, or something that might make them suspect inside Iran?
No, listen, I think obviously we will never know who is who will be the next leader or legitimate president or leader, whoever want to say, unless there is free, fair, and open elections inside Iran under international observers. But secondly, Reza Pahlavi, the prince, the demonstration started end of December, 29th of December. People were on the streets. Come January the 5th, he made his first call for people to come out and protest and keep the streets. And then we saw 9th and 10th, suddenly all over Iran, millions, and into some estimates, over 4 million across the country, not in one place, but this time in Tehran, in North Tehran, in South Tehran. We had northwest in Mashhad, in Qom. People were calling his names. But what he proposes, and which is, I think, very logical, is let us, and these protesters are wanting an end to the regime. And after that, after a period of transition, let there be a referendum, let all parties get together, and this is what we are seeing in his support. The Kurds, the Baluchis, the other groups, 7 Kurdish groups supported him.
Let me ask you, because this is very, very important, very important.
Yes.
So I've read quite a lot of an analysis, preparing for this interview.
Yes.
In fact, certain Kurdish groups, other groups that are disparate groups, say they haven't actually been reached out to by the monarchist opposition. And as you know, I know in your view and in most people's views, they're not fair and free elections in Iran ever. Yeah. But given who is involved, this last time, the more conservative hardline candidate got some 13 million votes, while Pezeshkian, claiming to be more of a reformer and certainly secular, got 16 million. That means it's a divided country. Does any opposition get that? Do they understand that it's not just a country that is just urging and wanting secularism and pro-Westernism and all, that there's a real division there?
Well, in the last election, look at the number of abstentions, the ones who actually did not go and vote, which was in the tens, nearly 50% did not vote, or maybe even more. I mean, the top candidates in parliamentary elections, in parliament right now, they probably received only 10% of the vote. So that's one thing about the elections. Secondly, about these the Kurdish groups that I referred to, there were the 7 major Kurdish groups. And the person that has been in touch with them is basically also, from Mr. Pahlavi. I mean, they are in open communication. So I can send you the names.
Okay, let me just ask you a question, because this has been another complaint, and we've seen it after Mahsa Amini's killing. There was a group, including Mr. Pahlavi, and they were going to put aside differences and try to have a unity opposition campaign. It collapsed after 2 months. There's been a lot of rivalry. So are you convinced that at this time, whether or not, at this time there is a coherent opposition that can actually do politics in a way that has to happen? And joint question, are you concerned that President Trump seems to be moving away from, quote unquote, coming to the rescue of the protesters?
Number one is that what's different this time is that the protesters on the street are asking for the end to the regime. Only in 2025, there was a poll done by IPSA, which is under the control of the Supreme National, one of these supreme offices, and over 92%...
In Iran?
In Iran. Supreme
it's okay.
Cultural Institution. Supreme National Cultural Institution. Over 92% said they are unhappy with the situation. That's number one. The degree of resentment is super. Number two, Mahsa in 2022 was a stepping stone to what we see today. This is just another form, as you know, this type of protest, although we had protests from 2009 onwards, but this specific type of protest, which is very secular, started in 2017 2019, 2022. And this time, the difference is that the opposition is ready, whereas with those, it was not ready.
And very finally, we've got 10 seconds. They said that the streets are quiet for the last 4 days. Do you think this phase is over? Has it been crushed?
Well, the Iranians in the diaspora are continuing their demonstrations in all capital cities and various cities around the world in front of U.S. embassies and in also Iranian embassies.
But inside Iran for the moment?
Inside Iran, we don't get pictures.
Nazenin Ansari, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.